Hi, I'm Dr. Gail Randall. I'm here at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time to do my Instagram TV like I promised. I'm board certified internal, integrative, gastroenterology, and also functional medicine. So I can see your questions now, so I'm doing something new technically, so that's kind of cool. Hi David, hi Patty, hi Rochelle. Very nice for you to join me. One of the biggest things that we all need to consider, I am the author of Soul Doctoring, Heal Yourself, Heal the Planet, is of course our planet. So I'm going to be talking about this from various aspects, kind of like the refractions on a gemstone, over the next many talks, as I have the last 2 or 3. But we've got to look at it from all different ways. You know, we're at about 10 minutes to 12, and like Richard Attenborough says, and I agree with him, we can make a difference. We can make a difference. So one thing I started thinking about, and I think it's important, is, you know, what we eat has a profound effect not only on our own health, but on the planet's health. And we really need to think about that hard. So I started thinking, so where did it come from? Where did it come from that we started thinking we should eat meat? It turns out there was a scientist named Dr. Liebig, Liebeg or IG, from the 1800s. And he felt that his research showed that you had to eat meat to have energy. Of course, we know that's not true now at all, not at all. As a matter of fact, quite the opposite, because vegetables, especially vegetables, well, all kinds of vegetables, give us glycogen. They're carbohydrates. Vegetables are complex carbohydrates, and they give us glycogen, which is what feeds our bodies. Our bodies run on glycogen. Humans are made to run on glycogen. You know, so what we're doing is we're feeding animals. We're taking up the vast amount of our farmland, the vast amount of our water, and I'll tell you those specifics in a little bit, and we're giving it to animals, and then we're eating them. So they're just really the middleman. We don't need to eat, we don't get any glycogen from eating animals, as a matter of fact. So if you're an athlete, and I try to convince my athletes about this, if you're just eating meat only, you're going to feel fatigued. You're not going to have the energy that you want to have to you know, go the whole distance. You're not going to have that extra energy, the burst of energy that you need to win. You need glycogen in your muscles, so you need carbohydrates. So, you know, that being said, so this scientist in the 1800s tells everybody they need to eat meat, and that caught on. Everybody thought they needed to eat meat. Of course, the meat industry picked it up and promoted it because they could make money that way. And somebody's asking me, are plant-based meats nutritious, or should they be eaten once in a while? Plant-based meats, plant-based meats, it depends on which ones you buy. You know, read your ingredients. A lot of them are made out of soy. So soy, although it's a phytoestrogen, is fine. It blocks your estrogen receptors for other more severe estrogens that actually come from meats that you don't want to have to create cancers and other things or stimulate your hormones in the wrong way. However, if you have had cancer or breast cancer or something, that's another story. So everybody's different. So check out what's in your plant-based. I'm still waiting for the organic one. If there is one, let me know. But I like the ones that have the plants in them, of course, and mostly pea plant protein or plant protein. Be careful, because some of them put gluten in there for the protein, and I don't like those. Okay, so otherwise they are pretty nutritious. They do have a fair amount of sodium, so if you have high blood pressure, you got to watch out for that. But in general, the plant-based burgers are pretty good, and so just read your ingredients. So back to glycogen. Glycogen is the form of energy we need for the energy burst, both for athletics. Our brain loves sugar, wants sugar. Glycogen goes into sugar, feeds your brain. In order to have your brain functioning the most highest capacity, we need glycogen. And from that comes from vegetables. Okay, so I'm not saying sugar. Of course, sugar has its own downside. If you just eat straight sugar, you know, it can also cause inflammation, but straight meat causes inflammation as well. It turns out that the average plant eater gets 70% more than protein than they need. So the old adage, and there are a lot of health doctors go around saying you got to eat meat to make meat. And that's just really not entirely true. Tell that to a silverback gorilla, and they have more muscle than we do, for sure. And they'll tell you, I never had a molecule of meat in my life. Maybe an occasional bug slipped in, but mostly plants. Okay? So, it's all really about amino acids. So plants, animals have strings of amino acids. And even I was taught in early medical training that plants are not complete amino acids, and that also is simply not true. So I want to burst a couple of these wives' tales that have been carried along, you know, in the thought of meat eating and diet per se. It's just not true. Plants have complete amino acids in varying amounts, and you can get all the proteins that you need from plants. There was a study that looked at over 130,000 individuals, and they looked at heme iron, which of course only comes from animals. And heme iron is a very dangerous thing. It's one of the few dangerous things that comes from eating animals. And they found that it increases your risk for coronary heart disease by 27%, so almost, you know, a third. And it turns out that you should eat less than a milligram of heme iron per day. One hamburger has 2 or 3 milligrams of heme iron. One hamburger. So think about that. And it also, in terms of athletic performance, because I work with a lot of athletes, including MMA guys and other athletes, what you eat right before and what you eat right after you exercise has a profound effect, and this goes for the average individual as well, on your performance. But it's really why, and not just performance, but what is it doing to you? So when you eat meat, you're getting a lot of fat, okay? So you're getting a lot of fat, you're also getting a lot of chemicals. And not just the heme iron that I mentioned, something called NEU5, it's NEU5GC, which is a tumor-producing molecule that is definitely, it's a sialic acid that does not come from humans, only comes from non-human flesh. Endotoxins, which come from gram-negative bacteria, lipopolysaccharides, which cause inflammation in our bodies. Heterocyclic amines, which really just erode the inside of your blood vessels. And if you cook that meat on the grill, which everybody likes to do, you get AGEs, called AGES, which are very carcinogenic. And eating meat over plants changes your microbiome, and not in a good way. Then you get the production of a molecule called TMAO, which is toxic. It only comes from meat, and it elevates your cholesterol. And all of those things that I'm talking about, all those chemicals, and then the fat itself, cause your arteries to clamp down. And it covers your red cells with fat. It causes your arteries to get smaller, so it reduces your blood flow immediately, within minutes. So if you want to go out there and perform, or you want to think right, this is not what you should be eating right beforehand. because it's going to clamp down your arteries, reduce your blood flow, reduce your cognitive ability, reduce your performance ability. The opposite, when you eat plants, it dilates your arteries, reduces the inflammation because the antioxidants in the plants. And so right before, you want to supply more blood to your muscles. Right after, you want to recover. So it's a constant process in athletics of, exercise, kind of ripping out your muscles up a little bit and then recovering. So many studies have shown that for recovery, plant-based proteins are superior. And now, well, I know why, but now we know why, and it's because of the antioxidants, because of the increased blood flow that you get with the plant-based protein as opposed to animal-based protein. So after you are out, going and eating a bucket of chicken is like the worst thing you can do. Going and eating a bean burrito or something like that, that is like the best thing you can do. So, this is not a woo-woo thing. This is these are scientific facts now that we know about. Plants have 64 times the antioxidants that animal proteins have. And the inflammation, if you eat plants, it reduces your inflammation in your muscles by 29%. So it's a huge, huge effect. A plant-based diet is the only diet that's been shown to actually not only be able to reduce but reverse heart disease, a plant-based diet. And Dean Ornish has done a lot of work on that, looking up. He's written books on the reversal of coronary artery disease with a plant-based diet. So I feel that a plant-based diet is the first thing that I choose for someone that's either an athlete, for someone that has cancer. You want to reduce the amount of inflammatory and cancer-provoking chemicals in their body. For somebody that just wants to be optimally healthy, or, reduce their chances of cancer overall, that they don't already have it, they don't want to get it, or their parents had it, or something like that, and to improve your general health. So whether you've got disease, or whether you just want to perform better as an athlete, or you don't want to get disease in the future, the plant-based diet is the number one choice. It also is going to, what you eat, what is good for you, is good for the planet. Okay, we got 60 years of topsoil left. And most of our farming is done industrially. So what that means, and I told you about this in prior TV shows on a couple of weeks back and last week, tilling the soil is the number one contributor to not only the carbon that's in our atmosphere, the CO2, and taking the carbon out of the soil and the oxygen out of the soil and desertifying the land. So the more chemicals we put on the land, the more carbon we release from the soil. It no longer becomes soil, it becomes dirt. And then they have to put more chemicals on to make it work. It doesn't work. It does not work. In a handful of healthy soil, there are more microorganisms than the number of people that ever existed on the planet. Think about that. In a handful of dirt that's been treated with Monsanto or all of these herbicides and pesticides and fungicides, there are no microorganisms. And that food that comes from that land has way less nutrients than the food that comes from the land that has the microorganisms, which is either regeneratively farmed, or organic, or they just use these razor-like discs to sort of make little very sharp ditches in the soil where the seeds can drop in, but not enough to release carbon and oxygen and lose water. It's just almost criminal what's happening, really. The World Health Organization looked at 800 studies that showed a major association between meat and prostate cancer, breast cancer, coronary heart disease, diabetes. Diabetes was a great big one. We think always about sugar with diabetes. You know, there's more than 345 million people with diabetes right now. And if we went plant-based, it could change those people's lives like immediately, you know, to get off the meat. And the animal protein increases your risk of early premature death of all causes by 75%, and 4 to 5 times increased risk of prostate, breast, colon cancer and diabetes. So dairy is another thing to consider. Dairy definitely has been associated with increase in prostate cancer. And they looked at vegetarians that had 1 serving of chicken or more per week, and they tripled their risk of colon cancer. You know, we were all taught, oh, well, chicken is better, fish is better. I'm good because I don't eat red meat, but that's not it. Any animal that's been grown industrially and fed industrial grains and crowded into these, like if you look at where the chickens are grown, they're all like right next to each other. If you look where the cows are grown, they're all like right next to each other. These animals are very unhappy. As a matter of fact, they're miserable. They're full of antibiotics, they're full of chemicals, not only from the grain, because most of the land is taken to grow the grain to feed the animals, to feed us, when we could grow plants to feed us. It's said that if we could change, like right now, and grow plants instead of growing grain to feed animals, we could solve the world's hunger problem almost instantaneously. It's phenomenal. I mean, the amount. And also, you know, there's always this argument, no, we were meant to eat meat, our early ancestors ate meat. Well, these little tiny incisors are not cut out to tear meat. If you look at a carnivore, they have razor-like teeth, and they're back here. They're not the ones up here. These ones are just to scare other animals away, but the ones back here are the ones that are really for the tearing of the meat and eating of the meat. So carnivores have those very sharp razor teeth back here. We have flat teeth for eating plants. Carnivores have very short digestive tracts, whereas we have very long digestive tracts because it takes us a long time to digest plants. They also have entirely different microbiome than we have, and when we eat meat, we get the wrong microbiome growing, and that creates inflammatory chemicals in our body. So we also have what's called trichromic vision. In other words, we can see color. Like animals can't see the color of my shirt. It looks black and white to them. Why do we see color? So we can see brightly colored fruits and find them on the trees, because that's what we're supposed to be finding, or berries, so that we can eat those. So we're not designed to eat large quantities of meat. The only thing is, you know, the B12, but the B12 is in the soil, actually. So the animals eat the B12, we eat the animals, and then we get B12. Well, it used to be when we hunter-gathered, we would eat fruits and vegetables from the land that had soil on them, which we'd then get our B12 from. Unfortunately, now the land is so depleted that even the animals need to take B12 supplements. So that's not a hard thing to do, but that's what we need to do right now until we get this all sorted out and start farming correctly. The single biggest destruction of habitat on our planet is, guess what? Farming, industrialized farming. It's cost us biodiversity. It's cost us, like I said, we only have 60 years of topsoil left. We've desertified 2/3, which means turned into desert, of the land on our planet. And the other thing that happens, you talk about global warming, when that land is heated up, it doesn't cool down. What cools it down? The plants that grow on it. But if it's devoid of nutrients and it's devoid of microorganisms, which fix the nutrients in the soil, no plants will grow there. So we've got to do something to get back to nature, and it's a biomimicry, and we really can. It's just we have to understand these things first. So it's about getting educated. I'm trying to help you understand what's really going on. So it turns out that meat, dairy, and livestock take up 83% of the farmland. So either growing food from them or having them inhabit the earth in those terrible feedlots where they live those miserable lives. I call it eating our own misery. And they only supply 15% of the world's calories. So it's not a very good business deal for any of you that are business people. It's not a good trade-off, plus what it's doing to the planet. It's warming up the planet, and it's taking our water. You know, that 25% of the rivers no longer reach the ocean because we've taken all the water to feed to the crops, to feed to the animals, to feed to the people. And like I said, I'm not trying to tell you all doom and gloom, because there are answers for this. It's the industrialized farming that's doing this. It's the leading driver of deforestation, of course, in our entire land, in our entire world. This kills me. There's 240 liters of water it takes to make one hamburger. One hamburger. Water's the next gold, guys. Water is the next gold. You know, if you look at the areas, the deforested areas, the desertified areas, there are people there, and mostly in Asia and Africa, and their bounds are increasing in number, and it's said, you know, by 2050, we're not going to have enough food to feed all the mouths that we have, and we definitely aren't going to have enough water. But if we would change the way we do farming, look at how much water we would free up. It's astonishing. A fourth of the consumption of the water in the world is to produce animal products. Think about it. So what we have to do is start thinking about other options. What are other options? Because agriculture is the biggest threat. And it's also the biggest chance that we have to save the planet if we change to a different kind of agriculture. And I've been hinting at this for a few times, but there's something called regenerative agriculture, which is where they make very good use of water. They grow all the animals together with the wild animals, the cows, the pigs, the birds, the ducks, the snails. They all are together in the same hectare of land. And then after a very short period of time, they move them to another hectare of land, and so forth. And they probably don't return to that first hectare of land for maybe a year. It's their hooves and their excrement that restores the grasslands and the earth to its prior state. So we need the animals. If you choose not to eat them, that's okay. But if you choose to eat them, those are the ones you want to eat. And they're happy. They have no hormones and no chemicals. And they're grown in the way that nature would have it. You know, we always think we're smarter than nature, but in fact, we aren't. We always have to end up getting back to nature to save ourselves and the planet. So restorative farming is one way. There's another favorite thing that I love called It's a company called Willow, and you can look it up on willow.farming.com, and they grow all of their foods, all plants, inside. It uses 99% less water than industrialized farming. There are no heavy metals, no chemicals whatsoever, and you can actually own your own farm. You can grow whatever herbs and plants you want to grow. You can watch them on a camera. Check them out online. They're just an amazing company. I'm going to have Sam Bertram, he's the CEO of Willow, on my podcast. So watch for that. I'm also going to have, I found out about a new company. Well, they're not so new. It was new to me. It's called Blue Nest Beef. And they're an amazing regenerative farm. So check them out too. Say Dr. Randall sent you. And there's other regenerative farms I recommend. One's called Primal Pastures. Another one is called Kiss the Ground. As a matter of fact, there's a Netflix film you should watch, which will teach you a lot about regenerative farming, will teach you a lot about the earth, a lot about the things that I'm promoting. So on Netflix, so watch that. It's called Kiss the Ground. And it's just really worth gaining that information, because it'll help you understand what we can do to make a difference. What we can do to make a difference. For one thing, the number one thing is go plant-based as much as possible, organic, of course. And then if you do want to have meats, get it from a regenerative farm. You can Google. There are lots of regenerative farms popping up all over the place. And, you could find one in your area. It mimics the predator-prey relationship, and it's biomimicry. So it's really a lovely, lovely thing. There was a movie called Our Little Farm or something like that. Check that out, because those guys were a regenerative farm as well. So regenerative or carbon-focused farming can slow carbon emissions and even hold in place carbon dioxide and the primary greenhouse gases. It sequesters carbon within the soil and the plants, whereas the tilled soil, as I've been talking about, releases carbon into the atmosphere, which combines with oxygen to make the carbon dioxide. And the thing about that is we end up with this carbon debt. So even if we could stop all emissions right now, we still have a carbon debt to catch up with, from the past. But, it doesn't mean we can't make it better and start doing it as soon as possible. So regenerative farming also, this is a big thing, uses composting to minimize tilling and fertilizers and whatnot. And one thing that I'm really proud of here in California, and I wish we would get that going here in Los Angeles, is they have turned the entire city of San Francisco. They take all of the food scraps and compost them. They have these huge composting plants, and then they send them out to the surrounding farms. I think that is amazing and a beautiful effort, and we should all take heed of that and copy them. There's something I wanted to bring to your attention. Did you know that Bill Gates is America's top farmland owner? I mean, I just found this out not that long ago, so it surprised me. And although they have good words, they do call it the Sustainable Agricultural Working Group. I recommend all my followers to email Bill Gates. I'm certainly going to lead a group to do this. There's a couple emails I found. One is info@gatesfoundation.org, info@gatesfoundation.org, and bill.gates@gates Foundation.com. And we need to urge him strongly and tell him that the people of America highly, and the world, highly urge him to use his land for regenerative farming, which he can be a huge hero to save the planet if he does that. So let's encourage Bill to do the right thing with the farmland that he's acquired, because it's a lot. It's a lot, let me tell you. Over 2 million acres and then in 22 states, and an additional 2 million in 7 countries. I mean, and then he just continues to buy it. So I just hope he has the right thing in mind, and let's just tell him what we think the right thing is, which would be regenerative farming. Okay, I'm going to open it up to questions now. Do you guys have questions? I just want to remind you that I'm available for telemedicine sessions. It's been going really well, and people are getting a lot of their problems taken care of, which vary all the way from menopause to mental illness to gut problems to COVID information, vaccine or no vaccine. And so I'm available for you. You just have to call the office, 818-591-7600, or you can DM me for an appointment here on Instagram, or you can also go to my website, drgmrandall.com. Oh, hi, Matt. Oh, my opinion on Dr. Gundry. That's a good question. Honestly, I'm not totally convinced, because I don't really see the research to follow up him vilifying lectins to the degree that he does, especially when there's a really easy, quick fix. You buy your lentils or whatever you eat, beans and legumes from the store. You soak them overnight, just like Grandma did. Next morning, pour off the water, and the lectins go down the drain. Or you, better yet, feed it to your plants, because your plants don't care. They like any water. So soak them overnight, put the water on your plants, the lectins are gone, and you don't have to buy his product to survive, or otherwise, I mean, there are people that subsist only on legumes. As a matter of fact, I wanted to mention this. Did you guys know that the original elite athletes, the gladiators, they found this out through researching their bones, their remains, depended on, that they were mainly plant-based, and they mainly ate legumes and grain, and look how strong and amazing they were. So yeah, I'm really not convinced. I'd like to see something. How about tempeh and soy products? Yeah, soy, I think, has been vilified, to tell you the truth. If you have a nice organic soy source, it's also a really good protein and source of amino acids. Excuse me. So I'm certainly not against them. If you have a thyroid on the edge, because everybody brings this up, it does have phytates in it, but it's not the only food with phytates in it, as a matter of fact. But so if you have a thyroid on the edge, you may not want to eat gobs of soy. If you have a history of breast cancer, you may not want to eat gobs of soy, but otherwise it's a very good protein. And look at the Japanese people. If it was bad for you, it would do something. And also, likewise with the legumes, look at the Latino people. They subsist on that, and they do quite well. Or the Indians, the East Indians, eat mostly dal. They don't eat much meat, and they do very well. How much protein do you need on average, and what's the best plant-based sources? Yeah, so like we were saying, soy is a good source, legumes are a good source, Pea plant protein is one of my favorites. But honestly, you probably are getting more protein than you think you need. You know, it turns out you don't need as much as you think you need. So, honestly, about eggs, especially not industrially raised eggs, it said that even one egg is equivalent to 2 or 3 cigarettes in terms of cardiovascular disease. There is a lot of cholesterol. But if you are going to eat eggs, maybe make the yolk less and the whites more, and make sure that they're farm raised or pasture raised and organic, because they collect, mama collects toxins and puts them in her eggs and puts them in her milk, and then if we eat them, we get those poisons. It's just hard with eggs, or even cows, because even though a lot of these chemicals aren't allowed anymore, like dioxins, they blow over and even onto the organic land. They accumulate in the soil, and it's said that cows and chickens can consume those at a very rapid rate, and even though they're organic, they still have these things in them. And so, check out the Environmental Working Group. We have some huge number of chemicals in our body, and we have mechanisms to deal with them, but we're like teapots. We can only handle so much, and then it boils over, and then you're going to get things like autoimmune diseases and things like that. You want to do things that can eliminate chemicals from your body, like exercise, sweat. If you can't exercise, you can take a nice hot bath with salts and get yourself to sweat. You'll lose toxins that way, because we can't really go into saunas and things like that right now, but you can. Or a really hot bath. Do a really hot bath in your house. Drink green drinks, especially with parsley and cilantro and other intense green leafy vegetables. I love dandelion, and then throw in a carrot or an apple for taste. But there are lots of ways to detoxify yourself. I have Randall's Rainbow Detox. You can go on my website and find out about that, or call us. I just had a lady do it. She said, "Oh my God, Dr. Randall, I can't believe it. I feel like I used to. I feel light. I feel strong. I lost 8 pounds. My blood pressure," she was on the verge of going on lisinopril. I even gave it to her because her blood pressure was like 180 over 100 and something. She doesn't need it anymore. She went plant-based. She did the Randall's Rainbow Detox, which not only cleans you scientifically from the inside, but it cleans your auras, because we go through every color of the chakras. So it's extremely therapeutic, both spiritually and physically. So check that out. But just doing green drinks can get the toxins out of you. Well, if you have allergies to, honestly, Matt, it's a good question, but all milk is tainted because the mama concentrates the chemicals in the milk, and then she passes them on to you. The other problem with that, especially if it's industrial raised milk, they even have a limit for how much pus cells can be in the milk, like 750 per milliliter. Those pus cells are bringing those cytokines right into your body, causing more inflammation, causing the cytokines attract more white cells, which attract more cytokines. It's a cascade. So milk is inflammatory, big time. I don't think that we as humans are meant to drink the milk of another species. We're not really set up for that. Most people are lactose intolerant, whether it's goat or a horse or gopher. We're just not set up for it. We don't have the enzymes. Most people, even white people, 70% are lactose intolerant. Black people even more, Hispanics even more, Asians even more. So we're not set up to drink milk from. And then once you turn it into cheese, it's basically, I hate to say this, but it's coagulated pus. Now, if it's the cleanest goat on the planet and blah, 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 you know, of course, maybe not. But we're just not set up to eat that kind of thing. Even organic sheep and goat milk. People always negotiate with me. They do the same thing with bread. Can I have bread? No, bread is a refined carbohydrate. Well, what about if it's almond bread? It's still ground down into a powder. Anything that's ground down into a powder, pressed out into a bread or a cracker or a cookie is a refined carb, because by the time you chew it and your amylase mixes with it and it gets down into your small bowel, it's sugar. It's sugar, and that's going to promote your microbiome to shift. That's going to promote inflammation. It's not something you want to do. Eat oatmeal. It's whole. It's a whole food. You want to eat whole foods, mostly plants, and if you're going to do meat, it should be about this much. And it should be from a regenerative source. Or if you can't get that, I mean, get organic, pasture-raised, grass-fed, but it's still got chemicals in it. What about tempeh? Well, I think tempeh is fine. It is, I think, fermented, but I don't really think it's still soy, so I'm not against it at all. And, you know, they put flavors on it. It's kind of good. I mean, I wouldn't live on it, but I think it's fine. So next time, I'm going to talk more specifically about what foods. You know, I'm going to talk about fats and, you know, specifically, but really, it's not, doesn't have to be hard. Everybody says, oh my God, I can't eat anything. I can't eat dairy. I can't eat meat. I can't eat eggs. What do I eat? You know, well, there's plenty of stuff to eat, guys. You know, I want you to eat whole foods, mainly plants, and just a little bit of meat if you have to. But just keep in mind what it does. It closes down your endothelium. It slows down your circulation. It's not good for your brain. It's not good for your heart. It's not good for your muscles. And if you're an athlete, it reduces your performance and ability to recovery from injury. Yeah, all oatmeal is gluten-free, Matt. All oatmeal is gluten-free. I mean, it might not be 100% if it's made in a plant that also deals with gluten, but unless you have celiac disease, that's not really going to hurt you. It's, I have oatmeal every morning. It's actually an oatmeal that's mixed with flax, and I put oat milk on it. It's good. And it's good for you. And it actually creates the right microbiome. That's what we're trying to do with our plants too. You know, if we create the right microbiome, we're reducing the inflammation in our bodies. You know, they need the fiber to hang out on because they don't get that from meat. Thanks for the heart. Hi, Andrea. How are you doing? So you have other questions about diet? I'll just give you an example. When I get up in the morning, the first thing I do is drink a big glass of water because you've been asleep all night and your body's thirsty. Then, and sometimes if I have enough time, I'll put some lemon in that water. Then the next thing I do is I'll make my oatmeal and I'll get my supplements out and put them in a little dish. And as I'm eating, this is a key thing, as I'm eating my oatmeal, I layer in my supplements. So you shouldn't take your supplements on an empty stomach, and you shouldn't take your supplements on top of a full stomach. Your body doesn't like that. It likes you when you layer it in because it was originally in the food, so you're just putting it back. And then some things we take for therapeutic reasons, like right now we're taking things to prevent us from COVID, like quercetin, vitamin C, zinc, vitamin D, the NAC, and green tea. So I think I told you last time or one of the times recently, you can get that on Metagenics, and under my name, under the name of Immune Active, and you can get a discount on your first order, and it's grandallmd.metagenics.com, and it's called Immune Active, and it has everything in it that you need except the vitamin D, so it makes preventing COVID a lot easier. I have, like I said, I've been telling you guys, I have hundreds of people on this regimen, and I was bragging for many times that no one had gotten COVID on the regimen. Well, I had one guy get it, and he's 85, and he has severe asthma. He's exactly the guy you would think would end up going to the hospital. Well, he went to his girlfriend's house, and she had it, and they played kissy face, and he got it. So, well, good for him in one way, but... So anyway, he got it, but the really cool thing is he didn't get it very bad. And that was surprising, and I attribute that to his regimen. I also had him on another supplement that's a very powerful antiviral, which I've told you about a couple of times too, called Viranon, Viranon, from Standard Process. And it's a formula, so be sure to look at the ingredients and make sure that you agree with all of those the ingredients in there. There's some, well, what's in there is St. John's wort, thuya, and then I think a type of licorice, not exactly licorice, but fennel, I think. And it's very effective. It even treats herpes and herpes zoster and other types of chronic viral infections like EBV virus, but it does help prevent COVID. So he was on that as well. So that's a very good protocol to remember. Come on, Matt, you don't have any other questions to argue with me about? Okay, guys. Oh, the Viranon, the the protocol, it depends on where you're at with your vaccinations, but if you're not double vaccinated, if you're doing the Moderna or the Pfizer, or if you're doing the Moderna or the Pfizer, where you need 2 vaccines, you should stay on the protocol until at least 4 weeks after you get your second vaccine, because that's when you get your 95% immunity. But and they even say to wear a mask too. So so that would be the Immune Active, which I just told you about, which was quercetin, zinc, NAC, vitamin C, and then take also vitamin D, which is crucial because all the patients that ended up getting admitted to the hospital had low vitamin D levels, so I think that's crucial. And then the Viranon is not an everyday thing. It's if you get it, if you get exposed to it, if you're going on a plane, or if someone's coming to your house that's been on a plane, you know, like high potential contagion type situations, or if you feel like you got, you know, somebody coughed on your face, or if you got exposed. Is what true, Matt? Oh, that the vaccine does not prevent, just reduce symptoms. Well, it all depends on what strain you're talking about, because now we know there are mutants and there are other strains, and they're working on booster number 1, 2, 3, 4. So, yeah, you know, there's the strain that began in England that apparently neither Moderna or Pfizer prevent us from. There's a Johnson & Johnson vaccine coming out, however, that apparently does cover that in the South African strain, as I understand it. But it's a complicated thing. This COVID thing is tricky. Again, my urging is, you know, so we don't get more pandemics, because there will be more. if we don't change our ways. So we have to change, in the number one place where COVID was attacking was, guess where? In the meat industry. The rates were off the wall, They say, well, it was partly because of crowding and this and that. I think that's how they start. It wasn't some meat market in China that started it. It wasn't Fauci that started it. It wasn't a conspiracy. It's starting, these things are coming about because of the global situation, because of what we're doing with animals, because of what we're doing with farming, because of what we're doing. And all of that we can change. We can change it, and we won't be getting these pandemics. So let's change the way we're farming. Let's go to regenerative farming. Let's stop increasing the carbon emissions. The carbon emissions from farming is equal to the carbon emissions from, if you add up all the carbon emissions from every single kind of vehicle on the planet, ships, trains, planes, automobiles, the carbons from farms is just as much, if not more. So, I'm not saying we shouldn't reduce carbon emissions from vehicles, but I am saying proportionally think about it, if that's what we're doing. And when we can if we could change over to plant-based, from growing all the farmland for feeding cows, which is so inefficient, we could change the planet in a very short order. So, write Bill Gates. Tell him that's what we want to do. Bill Gates at info@gatesfoundation.org and bill.gates@gatesfoundation.com. Let's tell him. Let's tell him what we want as a people, what we want from him. Let him be the hero. I say, go, Bill. I want you to be the hero. I want you to lead us to planetary cleanliness and for atmospheric, improving global warming and getting rid of these pandemics. Let's do it. Okay. Anything else, you guys? Hi, Eileen. Oh, you just came. You missed all the good stuff. Except for you coming, of course. Yeah, we sort of reviewed a lot about the planet. We talked about farming. We talked about global warming. Next time, Matt asked me one time, did I have a prayer? And next time I'm going to share that prayer with you. I'm going to share more information about foods and fats and, what is the best for our bodies, what kind of fat is the best, what's the good and the bad and the ugly. If you guys don't have anything more for me, oh, I love you too. Okay, I love you guys. Write Bill Gates. Look up regenerative farming, and don't tell me you can't afford it. People used to tell me that with organic food. Oh, Dr. Randall, I can't afford organic food, and I tell them you can't afford not to. And now I'm telling them if you're going to eat meat, it needs to be from a regenerative farm. I can't afford it. I was like, same answer. I can't afford not to. Thank you. Happy Valentine's Day to all of you as well. I love you guys. And I'll see you next Friday. Okay? All right. Bye now.